Boy howdy, have we got a lot to talk about in the chapter. It's called the fucking capture, Adam. Boy howdy, have we got a lot to talk about with the capture. This is Animorphs book 6. We're now on to cycle 2. We're back to Jake. Let's talk about Animorphs number 6, the capture. We all know this one. It's where Jake gets infested by a yerk and madness ensues. So let's cover bit by bit. Jake is practicing morphs. So he practices morphing a cockroach and gets stuck in a cockroach motel. Goes back, tells the others that he's done this. Why have you done it? Well, I'm practicing morph because I overheard Tom talking to 5 different doctors. Because, of course, Tom isn't very good at privacy. And the animals are like, well, why is he talking to these doctors? So they want to go find out. So they morph cockroach, go to this place, the sharing, stuff happens, and then eventually Marco somehow finds out that the governor is going to that hospital and he's going to be infested. And so they go into the hospital, boil the yerks alive, and then Jake gets infested. They go off, they quickly realise that he was infested, and they starve the yerk. Book finished. Review over. Bye. Actually, no, there's more stuff to cover than that. I'm going to get that. The reason I've done that, I'm getting the plot out the way first, because there's so much to unpack in this that it's going to take me like an hour if I've just went through it plot by plot. I'm just going to go for my bullet points. So I've established the plot, and we can take these bullet points that I've got, how I've got them. Let's do it. There is so much in this. There is so much. Now, spoiler, it's not as good as book 5, which I gave a 10 out of 10 to. There were parts in this that were quite a disappointment, but it's a very good book. The latter third of this thing is magnificent. It's just a pity about some of the stuff in the middle. It's almost an inverse book 3, this one, because book 3, you had the really good bits at the start at the end, and then the bit in the middle was a bit... No. The really crap stuff at the start at the end, and the middle was really good. This one, the stuff, the sandwich stuff is... I've lost it. I think you know what I mean. Right, so, first bullet point I've got. Jake should probably check the house for potential cockroach traps. When you're morphing on your own, you should probably check for any dangers you might encounter. Even if you're with other people, but especially when you're on your own. And so Jake was being somewhat foolish. It's not as bad as, say, the dealing Dan stuff or the stealing the rifle stuff or whatever that was in book 2. It's not as bad as that. We've seen Cassie previously morph on her own. By the way, Cassie, you had a go at Jake for morphing alone in this book. Now, maybe because you've already learnt your lesson from that, but still. Once more, Cassie she's got 2 brains. And they both hate each other. And they both argue with each other. Is she schizophrenic? That would be a plot twist. But whatever. Jake should probably check for cockroach traps. He checked for people leaving the house. But, unfortunately, now this is something he can't help, his dad is crap at tennis and his foot fell off or something like that. So that's unfortunate. But it's not a bad start, and it actually gives us a good insight into how the team is progressing. Or how specifically Jake is progressing. Where he's talking about starting to practice morphs. And Marco has a funny little bit near the start where he said, we never practice morphs. We just do it on the fly and almost die. That's a nice poem as well. So that's interesting to see how Jake is progressing. I will say in this book, he does start to become that little step further towards being the idea of a classical leader. One of the big themes in this book, and it starts from pretty much the start, and it's a thing throughout. There's a bit of an expansion on what happened in book 1, where there was one point where, I think in book 1, where Jake was like, maybe someday I'd have to kill my brother. Book 6 takes that and runs with it. So throughout this book, Jake he's struggling with putting his emotions aside in favour of cold rationality. He sees Tom, and he seems to have grown to the idea that, well, not grown to, but more accepting of the idea that someday he will just have to put his emotions aside. Of course, far off into the future, this becomes important, but for now, let's just leave it at that. This plays into the other plot points of Book 6 as well, which we'll get into in a bit. I'm just taking these bullet points at a time, so just bear with me. It's a very interesting arc that Jake is going through, where he has these attachments, these close things. He's got his brother live with him. He sees his brother every day, which is the difficult thing for him, because in the back of his mind, he's like, I may kill him eventually. And he's living with this guy, and you do feel a great deal of sympathy or empathy for that. But this idea that to become a leader, Jake sometimes has to be gone with his emotional background. He needs to disregard his family ties and whatever things he holds close for a more cold and rational way at looking at things. Because as a leader, you have to make the big decisions. And you cannot let emotion get into that. So this, to me, is a really interesting thing to watch unfold. See Jake slowly becoming less emotional in his reactions. Now, we're only on book 6. It's only his second book, so we will see it continue. But that, for me, having gone through leadership training, is a big thing. And I feel for Jake's character now. And I don't understand why he's the least liked of the Animorphs. So far, it's him and Marco. Marco's my favourite, but Jake's probably number 2. Right, what's next? Right, the scene in the sharing. This was where the book faltered. Great book, but starting with this chapter and sort of stringing along through the middle of the book, there is just... it's bad. It's really bad. This sharing meeting thing is something to behold. So they go in, and just conveniently at the right time, Visor 3 arrives in his new human morph, brand spanking new human morph, which I was picturing as Charles Dance, because that's who is voicing him in my head. Charles Dance, the guy who played Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones. Very entertaining in my head. So he comes in, and the cockroach, they're all cockroaches, the Animorphs, apart from Tobias, obviously. So they go in, and they're listening to what's going on, and they're finding out stuff about this hospital. I forget precisely what was mentioned. I forget what information they learned. Hold on a minute. Oh yeah, so it was just Visor 3 and the Yeerks cackling manically and saying how evil they all are. Something about 200 new controllers per month. I think in the last book they mentioned that at some point they delve into how long the Yeerks are there, maybe a couple of years or so. And they're only getting 200 new controllers a month. It's pretty poor going. And something they want to get the governor, so the state governor. And the Animorphs are like, oh no, the California state governor, all is lost if he goes. The California governor, I mean, today is practically a Yeerk anyway. So I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem. But obviously these are Californian kids, and Californians like to think that the world is California and some dirty places. So it's no wonder the kids are like, California governor, no, the world is lost. So, to be fair, they say that the California governor's running for president. So all jokes aside, that would be pretty disastrous if the US president was a Yeerk. Whatever, I had a bit of a laugh, so well done me. Okay, so the Visor comes in, and then they notice these cockroaches after they've discussed their evil schemes. And one guy is just like, oh, they're just cockroaches, they're everywhere. And Visor 3 is like, fuck you, bang, bang. Fuck off, Visor 3. Let's just think about this rationally. They're in the middle of a city. We've established that by their whereabouts when they're going towards the place. There's probably people nearby who will hear gunshots. Guy goes missing. Disappears. Somebody calls, hold on, there were gunshots in that sharing club. Somebody else says, well, that guy who disappeared was a member of the sharing. Put 2 and 2 together. This guy died at the sharing meeting. What happened here? They go in, investigate. Sharing is busted. Visser 3, you are a klutz. You are a total wanger. Total melt. So, yeah, and then, so 5 cockroaches and a room full of people, and not one cockroach is, well, gone. Look at the size of your foot, and then look at the size of a cockroach, roughly so big. They don't move that fast. They don't. I've seen cockroaches. If I wanted to stamp on one, no fucking problem. Room full of people, military people, can't stand on a cockroach. I mean, what is going on? These Yeerks are so incredibly incompetent that this chapter just lost me. I was like, nah, that's too much. It's too much incompetence. They just sort of fucking, whoa! Can't fucking coordinate their feet right. What a bunch of clowns! Then again, clowns, they have the big feet, they'd get the cockroaches more easily. What a bunch of melts! We then get 2 scenes which follow the sharing scene. And they are almost entirely pointless. We establish that they're going to morph fly. And that the governor is going to the hospital. So we established 2 things. We didn't necessarily need 2 chapters of basketball and clothes shopping. It didn't feel right. The bit with Marco, the whole basketball game, yeah, we know Jake likes basketball. We established that in book 1. We don't need that scene there, and then we got the scene of Rachel enjoying shopping. We've established these characters. We're 6 books in. It just felt like a waste of 2 chapters in there in what is otherwise a really good book. At that point, I was thinking in my head, this book is a 6 or 7. Because these chapters in the middle, following from the awful sharing scene, just really dragged the book down. But thankfully, once that was done, we got into the real meat of this story. They morph fly, which they have a great time with, and infiltrate the hospital a few days before the governor is due to arrive. And they find the Yeerk room because they smell something off, which turns out to be the Yeerk pool water. And they head in. Animorphs takes out the one person that was in there. And then Jake says something rather unusual well, not so much unusual. He says something on page 90. Because Axe tells him about the unconscious body he just took out. Knowing your brother's controller, I did not kill this creature. I feared it might be him. So Jake replies, no, it's not, but that's a good instinct. Whoever this guy is, he's someone's brother, son, or father. So that's Jake's reason for not killing somebody. And that's page 90. Page 92. Axe, what do you think would happen to all those Yeerks in there if the temperature of the liquid suddenly went to, say, 120 degrees and the liquid was all agitated? Axe looked puzzled. I believe the heat and agitation might destroy them. Jake says, well, that would be a pity. Now, at first, I thought, hold on, Jake's character has just taken a complete 180 there. So he's concerned about one person being killed because they might have brothers and fathers and what have you. They've got a family. And then 2 pages later, he's got a pool full of Yeerks, like probably dozens of Yeerks in that pool. And he's like, yeah, fuck them. Just, I don't care. Just fucking kill them. At first, I was like, hold on, Jake. What's going on here? You're doing a Cassie on us. But no, I rethought about it, and I remembered what I said in my analysis of the last one. We're still in a very much black and white scenario here, where we've got the good guys and we've got the bad guys. The Animorphs believe themselves to be the good guys, and they believe the Yeerks to be the bad guys. They have had no experience, really, of talking to a Yeerk, of having even the capability of empathizing on some degree with these Yeerks. As far as we know, these kids, remember, 13, 14 years old or something like that, they probably don't see the Yeerks as almost like sentient beings. They probably see the Yeerks as just these monsters. I imagine they do. So they'll think of a person, they'll think, oh, that person's got a family just like me, because I've got a family, so the other person has a family. They'll see a Yeerk and they think, oh, that's just one of those monsters that's trying to steal our planet and try to take our families. So, thinking about that, I thought, it's not out of character at all, really. Jake sees these as monsters that have to be put down. So, I stepped back and thought logically about it, and I think I came to the right conclusion there. But for those of you who've read to the end of the series, you know that this scene here would probably be drastically different towards the end, and that is an indication of where the Animorphs series is going. We're still in the black and white phase of the books, for the most part. This book is where we start to see little cracks in that black and white narrative, and that's coming up in a little bit. But this part here is the cold rationality of war, where you have to make these decisions and you can't do it based on emotions. And this plays into Jake's earlier thoughts about having to take out Tom. It's cold and rational to dispose of these Yeerks. Is it the emotionally right decision? That's the question. And that is another part of the underlying theme of this book, which makes it so strong, this underlying base. Let's carry on. So Jake falls into the pool after what was like a ricochet bullet wound. And he falls into the pool just enough time to get Yeerked. The Animorphs, you know, do a good job. Kudos to the Animorphs team here, because remember, Jake's the leader, and from this point on, they're basically leaderless. But they get him out of the hospital in what seemed to be an efficient manner, and then proceeded to save him in what seemed to be an efficient and practical manner. So kudos to the rest of the team on this one. But let's carry on. Jake is Yeerked at this point, and on page 115, Axe was... At this point, they were suspicious of Jake being a controller. And Axe was saying how many Yeerks died in that pool and is overjoyed by it, essentially. He's mocking the Yeerk. And the Yeerk in Jake's head replies, I'm never happy when any creature has to be destroyed, but I don't feel any pity for these Yeerks, yada, yada, yada. The important part is I'm not happy any creature has to be destroyed. And Jake, after that, it's not like this is just the Yeerk's voice, because Jake said that's exactly what he would have said. So that is what Jake would have said. We get the feeling that Jake is already in the mindset of, you know, I didn't really want to kill those Yeerks, but I had to make the right decision for our cause. And that is a very leaderly, is that a word? Leadership. That is a leader's decision. That is a leader's decision. And I'm really starting to grow to this Jake character in how he's facing these situations. I'm really digging it, Jake. I'm digging it. Can I just point out as well that I still think Cassie is so close to a Mary Sue. Once again, she comes up with the perfect solution. Even though she's not meant to be the smart one of the group, I know that sometimes, you know, the non-smart ones have to make the smart decisions, but once again, Cassie is the saviour. Cassie, the pseudo Mary Sue. I've come up with a new name. The Ma Isu. It's the Hawk Bajir version of the Mary Sue. And I describe it as not quite a Mary Sue, but pretty bloody close. The Ma Isu. So that's Cassie at this point. So yeah, she comes up with the brilliant ideas. And the Animals proceed to restrain Jake, and they do, as I mentioned, a pretty bloody good job of it. There were some strange decisions, like, I mean, they could have just... They planned Rachel to fall asleep so that the Yeerk would try escaping, so they could recapture him. Why not just skip the middleman and not let him escape? I don't know, I sort of didn't really understand what was going on there, but whatever. They did a good job. They kept him, basically. They outsmarted this Yeerk. But I just want to step back a second, because I've just remembered something that's not in my bullet points. I have to retract a statement from my previous analysis, or some of my previous story analyses, where I said that Tom's Yeerk wasn't really established as a high-level controller. We have established in this book that the Yeerk in Tom's head has been promoted and is now closely linked with Visser 3, which is why he now leaves Tom's body he was destined for the governor, and Tom is now going to be a low-level Yerk again, because let's face it, he's a high school kid. Why would a high-level Yerk be in a high school kid? Whatever. So that's that out of the way. Temrash114 is the Yerk's name, and he was, very conveniently, Tom's Yerk. That's fair. I mean, I'm happy with that convenience. It's fine, because we established from the start that Tom was very much connected to the hospital thing. The governor was going to the hospital. In a way, it makes sense. So I'm happy to leave it at that. But I just found it rather... Hold on a minute. So, if they're only going to infest... Oh, screw it. So we see the true teamwork of the Animorphs coming through in this book, and it's a joy to behold. We're into the real meat of the book here, and it really pushes the grade up for it. And then Cassie comes along. Right. So in book 4, we established that Cassie doesn't like using the morphs of sentient beings because she thinks it's basically what the Yerks do. We established that. Near the end, she's like, oh, it's okay because we were saving the world. But I think I know, it's been a while, but I think I know for a fact, that's probably not a very good sentence, that later on she complains about it again. So, whatever. But Cassie is more than happy. In fact, it's her idea that Axe morphed Jake without his consent. Wait, so Cassie... So you don't like the idea of morphing dolphins because it would be like enslaving them. But you're going to allow someone to morph a human you know and apparently fall in love with. You're happy with that? That no problem in Cassie's mind. This Ma Isu is fucking nuts. She's off her rocker. She needs to be put in a home. I really don't understand this character, this Cassie character at the moment. And I'm not surprised to see so many in the Animorphs community also like, this character just isn't quite right. Whatever. Cassie is... She will get better. I know that for sure. But in these early books, she is bordering on insufferable. It's just the constant schizophrenic level 180s. She's, for 1 minute, she's totally against something, and the next minute she's suggesting it as a great idea. It's awful. But let's just move past her. One thought I did have, looking at this bullet point here. You know how thought speak works? Thought speech. Where you think something at someone and they hear it. Well, Jake, when he's yerked, is still capable of thinking. We see that because it's in the book. He's still thinking. Why does thought speak stop working for him? Because he is thinking. And there were parts in this book where he's trying to think or trying to say stuff to someone. Obviously, they'd never really go into the full science of things like thought speech and stuff like that. But surely, if Jake is able to think, he can still thought speak. It's just one of those thoughts that I had. But for plot convenience sake, I suppose, it doesn't work. We come to the end of the book, and the Yerk is still fantasizing. He wants to be what was in this book is said to be an undervisor, but in later issues was corrected to say subvisor. So we're introduced to the concept of subvisors in this book. But that's just that little bit of extra lore, because at this end of the book we are getting a lot of lore coming in, more alien races, because the Yerk goes through another bit of lore, the fugue. Or the fugu, I don't know what you want to call it. Answers on a postcard what the pronunciation is, but it's where the Yerk is dying. And Jake is able to see the memories of this Yerk and his previous hosts, and we get almost like a first-person view from a Ged, which is an animal native to the Yerk home planet, sort of like a little monkey-like thing. And we also get first view from a Hork-Bajir warrior. One of the things that confused me in this book at the end here is Jake says that the Ged and the Hork-Bajir become a part of him, and so does Tom. Because he sees himself through Tom's vision at the breakfast table. He says I felt them become a part of me. That's never really explained, and I didn't really understand what he meant by that. Did he mean that part of their minds became intertwined with his? Or was it just their memories that he kept for himself? Or what's going on here, Jake? That part did confuse me. Has he got like a Ged and a Hawk-Bajir's mind just like swimming alongside at the back of his, like telling him shit? And I don't know. This, yeah, that bit was weird, but that bit aside, this whole feud bit was very interesting. We get a lot of bits of lore in here. We get to see briefly from a Hawk-Bajir's point of view, which is the first time for this. And we start to see those cracks in the seams, because we also see by the seams of the black and white narrative, because not only do we get the brief look at the Hawk-Bajir's point of view, where these Hawk-Bajir are just fighting every day to resist the Yeerks. We get more of that later in book 13. We also get to see the emotions of the Yeerks, because that's never been explored before. The emotional levels of the Yeerks. And Jake is talking about how he's figuring out for the first time, how he's seeing this. And he says that even though there's not really love per se, there is things like, I can't remember exactly, but like grief, regret, affection, and these emotional levels. And the Yeerk sort of surrenders and said, yeah, you win, whatever. Yeah, there's a brief glimpse of relatability. A brief glimpse. And the cracks in the black and white thing start to appear. And that is what made the end of this book. Now, there is a little extra bit, where we see the Tower of Sauron. And reading this book for the first time, if you were reading this book for the first time, you'd be like, what the bloody hell was that all about? We see Sauron's eye looking at Jake. We do come on to that later, but that's another interesting bit of lore. In the end, fantastic book. And if it weren't for the bit in the middle, it could be another 10 out of 10. I'm going to give it a 9. So this book is a 9 out of 10. Jake's leadership skills, he doesn't do anything special, and for the latter half of the book, his leadership skills aren't even in existence. So it's a bit... It's a 7. It's a 7, because he didn't really do anything wrong. He was pretty average, didn't do anything great, and was absent for a large part of it. So I'm just going to go flat out 7. He's starting to grow into his leadership role. He's making leadership decisions, and he's talking like a leader, and he's learning to deal with his emotional reactions. But he doesn't really do anything with any of that. He just sort of thinks about it, makes the odd statement here and there. So straight 7 for Jake's leadership in this one. Yeah, the book is a 9. And there is a huge undercurrent in this book which makes it, because stuff at the fluffy stuff at the top, the more in-your-face stuff, isn't that special in this book. It's the underlying messages, because we get a lot of lore in the end. We get a lot of stuff that comes out further down the series, and Jake's character in this one, pretty spot on. I really like it. I really approve. It's a well-written book, apart from the bits in the middle. Really enjoyed it. So, that's the capture. Next book is going to be this one, The Stranger. And then I believe the next one after that is... In fact, I know the next one after that is one of the Megamorphs. The first Megamorphs. So next book is this one. Tune in for that. I'm doing this weekly at the moment. They're coming out weekly, so just next weekend tune in and you'll probably see it up. Anyway, this has been the Animorphs channel. Howdy y'all and all that sort of American crap. Right. I'll see you all later, you bunch of melts. See you later.